Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what we have to do at the start of the show. Like the stream, please. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications, all that good stuff. 5 stars on iTunes-ish or Apple Podcasts. That's the right thing. Spotify. You know, we're 2023. No iTunes really anymore. Bradley, how are you doing?
I'm great. Doing great. Good to be here. iTunes. Okay, boomer. Yeah,
I know.
I remember iTunes, getting that on my T-Mobile Sidekick.
Although we did just cover iTunes on the Majority Report because there was that MAGA rapper that said that he was number 2 on
Frangiato
iTunes.
Blow.
Yeah, that probably means that he had like 17 downloads, given how that just is not a
50,
useful platform to measure anything anymore.
He was shadow banned, but also top 2 on iTunes.
Yes, I mean, those two things work hand in hand. But honestly, great weekend of sports. I know that the markets for the NHL, for the Stanley Cup playoff, it's not ideal. I mean, it's Vegas and Florida. Basically, Miami essentially is where the Panthers are located. So for the most part, I feel like it's going under the radar. But I think it's exciting that there are 2 Stanley Cup contenders, neither of which have ever won the Stanley Cup before, that are going at it. And I think they're evenly matched, fun teams because they both have high-end offensive talent. And they both also have like grittiness, which I appreciate about them. The Panthers more so than the Knights, but we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah, and I mean, game 1 was interesting too because they were going back and forth for a while, and then there was just a flurry of offense by the Knights in the third period. So with an empty netter so it was more. What was really a 5-2 finish was kind of like 4-2 with an empty netter, but kind of more exciting than the
score indicated. Well, I mean, let's just touch on it now since we're here, because it was 2-2 going into the third period. That's why hockey scores can be deceiving for people that don't actually watch the flow of the game or might just watch highlights. You miss entirely like where the competitive like flow of the game is at when they go into crunch time in the third period. And Anthony Duclair tied it up.
Yeah, right up the faceoff.
Duke, my guy.
Wild goal. That was amazing to see.
Former Ranger who, I will say that for every former Ranger that I used to appreciate, but just another weird, just bizarre example of a player that clearly has high-end offensive talent who was not appreciated by the teams and kind of has bounced around the league. You could make some assumptions about that. We don't need to necessarily go there right now, but Duclair tied it up. I love his game, but I think the unsung hero of all of this at this point is Jack Eichel. I mean,
oh my God.
He hasn't scored since the previous series, but his impact on the game, he had 2 assists in the third period, setting up, I guess it was White Cloud. That was the game-winning goal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of elite center play that changes games, and that's why the Vegas Golden Knights traded for him, and that's why he had to force his way out of Buffalo because there was no way they were going to let him go.
And there was some interesting, just like anecdotally, there was a video from the kind of ice view of when there was that big scrap in the I think at the end of either the second or third period when Matthew Tkachuk took that kind of cheap shot at Nick Hague while he was being held back by one of his other teammates, and Eichel sort of stepped in to kind of like push back on Tkachuk, which I think is like credit to Eichel for A, kind of being a leader in that moment, and B, not being like, oh, I'm a star, I don't really need to like get into that right now.
Yeah, right.
But the fans who were around the guy who was taking the video were extremely supportive of Eichel, which I also think is like emblematic that he probably it was good that he found a new home and found a home of fans that were supportive of him and actively wanted him there, where at the end of it was just so acrimonious. Excuse me, it was just so acrimonious in Buffalo that like there really wasn't anything for him to stick around. And just great to see him on a playoff team, 3 wins away from the Stanley Cup. I just am so happy that like he's playing great hockey regardless of whether it's like flashy or only contingent on goal scoring, but like he's playing impactful minutes, doing impactful things all the time that he's on the ice. So it's really great to see.
I mean,
one of my favorite players in the league.
He's definitely one of mine too, and so is Tkachuk. So we're in like a win-win situation no matter how this ends up or how it shakes out. But
yeah, I agree for sure.
People forget there were a lot of Twitter doctors saying that Jack Eichel would never play again if because of his neck surgery, and that's why the Buffalo Sabres were preventing him from getting the surgery that he said that he needed, and they were using his contract to prevent a player from doing what he felt he needed to do with his own body. And all these Twitter doctors were like, you got to listen to, I mean, this is a risky surgery. He's never going to be able to do this again. And look, I mean, he got what he needed to get done. His neck, or I should say, what was I saying? Back. His neck is essentially fixed.
And he's playing great.
And he's playing elite.
On a playoff team in the Stanley Cup final.
And, like, it's kind of old school hockey talk to talk like this, but it is amazing to see how, in the end, even though the Panthers were the 8th seed, and I wouldn't say that the Knights were the flashiest team, like, in terms of, wow, like, they're this juggernaut coming out of the West. It could have been the Stars. It ended up not being. It could have been another team, the Oilers, whatever. But those teams are really structured around two-way players and stars that can play on both ends of the ice with a grittiness and a toughness that, like, can't necessarily be measured in analytics all the time. But for the old school hockey heads, even though the colors of the jerseys and the teams that they're representing aren't really indicative of like that kind of 1980s grinding hockey, it very much is in that same vein, I would say. And plus you get some great goaltending. Like, we've already talked about this game long enough and haven't mentioned Aiden Hill's insane.
Yeah, that was like
save of the year.
Yeah, I was gonna say like save of the playoffs, save of the year. I mean, it's really to be able to splay out like that and get your stick, not even like not even the blocker side, like not even the glove side. To get the stick on that puck, like that is a really like one of one, just by terms of sheer surface area, just extremely difficult. Like that's one of those shots where probably 98, 99 times out of 100 that just goes in. That just either that a bump on the ice prior to or after hitting the stick. If he flailed a little bit to the back, if the stick went over and he hit it back into the net, but he just managed to like basically stop it in its track. It trickled out a tiny bit and they were able to clear it. So it was just really an amazing save. And I think
totally.
This is a coming out party for this guy. I mean, he's played.
He's been
really,
a journeyman.
Really well. Yeah, like he's played extremely well. Basically this entire playoffs, and also wasn't even necessarily like the initial starter with Brossoit playing a lot of those minutes in the earlier series. So it's been great to see him flourish, especially in the biggest moments and against some other great goaltenders. I mean, he was in net against Connor Hellebuck in the first round. He was in net against
who's on the trade block. It seems maybe if the Jets rebuild. Interesting.
And he was in net against who we thought potentially was the best goalie in the league in Jake Ottinger, and he definitely surprisingly to a lot I think outperformed him. So it's just been, I'm very, very impressed with Aiden Hill.
Me too.
So far.
Yeah, I mean that was an amazing save, and Bobrovsky, he did all that he could in that instance, but that's that kind of save where he extended his stick out when he was essentially out of position and got it in the exact right spot. It was the mirror image in a way of what had happened on the first goal of the entire playoffs or the entire Stanley Cup final, which was the Eric Stahl opened it up. On the shorty. And that when that happened, you're like, okay, well, here we go. We underestimated the Panthers again. They just have some sort of magic. It doesn't matter if the Knights are a deeper team. But luckily, they were mentally tough enough to come back. So I still kind of stand by my original prediction, or our original prediction, about the Knights pulling it off in the end, even though that damn pregame show was so corny that it made me want to change my entire mind. Did you watch that, Bradley, at all? Where they have the knight
yes, of course.
Fencing with a shadow figure on ice.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. These are the pre-games that they do, that they used to do a lot. I don't know if they do them before every home game, but I think in the inaugural season in like 2018, they used to do them all the time. They're in Vegas, baby. Come on.
I know, but it's like, how have they not updated the production value?
Yeah, I don't know. It's quite kitschy. Maybe that's part of like the appeal. I don't know. Maybe that's like it's almost like that there's some sort of I don't know, like reverence for that type of like sometimes I feel like for certain people with certain things like production value, people like almost like that it's a little bit less highly produced or less like CGI laden or graphics laden, but it was literally two guys in morph suits with a dragon projector screen across the ice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. I've been to medieval times.
It was kind of it was giving medieval times a little
right,
bit.
but this is worse than medieval times. Medieval times has some showmanship. And it's just like there's so much more stuff that they could do with the Vegas thing. But I mean, I thought they'd bring out something a little bit different for the pregame show, but regardless, yeah, even some, just to wrap up that game, like William Karlsson is still not really scoring or playing super well, but it doesn't really matter because the Knights are so deep. Sam Bennett playing extraordinarily well as well, and of course, well, no, sorry, that was I meant to refer to the Panthers there, but Sam Bennett playing incredibly well.
Yeah, he's great.
Matthew Tkachuk playing incredibly well.
But I said
it was
before,
just the Knights were just deeper.
Yeah, and I said before the series, and I don't think this is over by a long shot. Even just I think like we were saying before, I think the game was far closer than the score necessarily indicated until the third period in that flurry of 3 goals in the course of a few minutes. But I said this before when we were doing our preview that if Eichel starts scoring, I think there's going to be a bigger problem for the Panthers, just because they, like you said, the depth is one thing, but if you actually start getting like pretty significant goal production from Eichel along with the playmaking that he's exhibited so far, that's going to be really difficult
Scary.
To stop.
Yeah. And Tiva Lockhart is angry at me. Says, Emma, again with the awful take. The Knights medieval times opening is the best thing in hockey. They had drummers lowered from the ceiling. Get out of here.
Yeah, there were some roof people. There were some ceiling people. Yeah,
and Tifa Lockhart, I'm right. No, it doesn't make. I didn't even see the drummers being lowered from the ceiling because I was so focused.
It was pretty. It was pretty obscured. You only really saw it at the end when they were kind of receding into the ceiling.
And and Antifa Lockhart adds, "Get out of here! This is the new playoff format. Sucks all over again." I mean, look, it ended up being very exciting that the Panthers made it all the way to the finals, but they would have been the 8th seed playing the Bruins regardless of the playoff format because
it would have been it would have been 1-8 regardless.
It doesn't affect. It does not affect. 1-8 or 2-7. It affects everything else. It affects the 3-4, the 5-6 seeding, and that's what makes it annoying. Like
the Devils and the Rangers would not.
That should not have happened.
They would not have played each other in the first round under prior seeding.
It would have been like the Devils or
it would have been like the Devils and the Who was 7? It was the Devils and the.
No, the 7 would have played 2. So.
Sorry, 3-6.
7. 3-6. It was still the Canes and the Islanders. That still would have happened, but it would have been. It would have been a different format.
Would it have been the Devils and the Islanders?
No, it would have been one of the Leafs and the Lightning.
Right.
And there would have been some switch up there. Mm-hmm. Like I don't understand the entire desire by the NHL. Well, they want to save money on travel, honestly.
Right, absolutely.
But they're like, let's make the rivalries within the division really tough. It's like that's what the regular season's for, buddy. We don't need to see a redux of it in the playoffs. So, and Tifa Lockhart, Emma again with the correct take.
And I also will say, I think there's also something more like earned or kind of exciting when those matchups aren't basically engineered prior to the playoffs beginning, in the sense that like. In 2012, when the Devils and Rangers met in the conference finals, that was exciting because like both of those teams, under their own path, made it to be the last 2 teams in the East before the Stanley Cup. Like that wasn't like, oh, because we're in the same division and we're 2-3 or whatever the case may be, we're in the first round. That was like we won 2 separate series to get to where we were to face off against each other.
I just didn't think that it would. I mean, I don't know how it's a good thing for the playoff format that the Lightning and the Leafs knew they were playing each other for 6 weeks, essentially. Like, I don't understand how that's a good thing for the playoff format for the league. But, just, again, correct. But let's touch on the basketball last night.
Yeah.
So
great game last night.
Great game. I mean, I think when you want to boil it down to a headline, I think you just say what you've been saying about the Heat throughout the playoffs, is that they're just playing better team basketball. I mean, they are playing incredible, or they played better team basketball last night, because we have that Spoelstra clip, right? Mm-hmm. Let's play that, because I think this exemplifies a little bit of what I'm talking about, because Spoelstra got this question from an ESPN reporter in the post-game press conference after the Heat lost, and he kind of After the Heat won, sorry. And he basically touches on a little bit of what I'm saying here, which is that, Jokic had this yet another unbelievable performance. And trying to limit him in one particular way is not the right way to go about it. You have to just play better team basketball. And I think that's what Spoelstra was bristling at here. So here he goes responding to an ESPN reporter's question.
Final question on the left.
Hey, Coach. Ramona Shelburne, ESPN. This is probably oversimplifying things, but sometimes when teams play against Jokic, you turn him into a scorer, you turn him into a passer, and he controls the game. He only had 4 assists tonight.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's just, that's the untrained eye that says something like that. This guy's an incredible player. Twice in 2 seasons, he's been the best player on this planet. You can't just say, oh, make him a scorer. That's not how they play. They have so many different actions that just get you compromised. We have to focus on what we do. We try to do things the hard way, and he requires you to do many things the hard way. And he has our full respect. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
I thought that was pretty good, and also shockingly prickly after a victory. That's why I said loss instinctively to start off. But
I think there's a few things there. So I think Ramona Shelburne, who is a good reporter and she's like a good personality on ESPN. I don't think she's no dummy.
I didn't realize that was her.
Yeah. She did even qualify that that there was a risk of oversimplifying it. But there is something to be said that Nikola Jokic had 4 assists as opposed to the NBA final high 14 he had in game 1, and that they lost by 3. But I think what gives credence to what Eric Spoelstra said is that he had 4 assists, which is, a very uncharacteristic night of passing for Nikola Jokic, and they still only lost because Jamal Murray didn't make a well-contested but near make to tie the game and send it into overtime. So despite making Jokic a scorer, that wasn't the only thing that kept them in the game, nor was it the only thing that led them to win. They got scoring from every player that they basically did not, that was basically absent in game 1.
There were five Heat players in double digits.
Exactly. Yeah. Gabe Vincent.
That's what kind of I was alluding to start off. Right. Gabe Vincent had 23.
Which I think he may have had like 7 in game 1.
Butler had 21.
Duncan Robinson came in really clutch in the fourth quarter with not only 3
10 points in the fourth.
But driving into the lane to make a tough layup. Like Max Strus contributed because he, in basically all respects, he always contributes in one way or the other, even if it wasn't to the degree of the other guys. Caleb Martin came in and was a little colder and made a really key 3-pointer at the end of the game. Jimmy Butler was struggling basically for the first 3 quarters, and then because he's Jimmy Butler, came into the fourth quarter and just started making extremely difficult shots with very little separation. Bam Adebayo maybe had the best game of the entire playoffs. It was just
damn. He's had some good games, but yeah, he really was a force.
Just in terms, I think of situational basketball where he was really getting to his elbow jumper. He was not letting the physicality of Jokic bother him as much as it was in game 1. I was just impressed based off the level of competition, how well he played in a really pivotal moment, and how much they need that. Like they beyond the shooting, which they were volcanic behind the arc. They were 16. They were 16 of 31 or 15 of 32 beyond the arc. Like really, really amazing shooting night for them. They did also just need Bam's presence in the paint to continue, to kind of buttress their offense. And I think what was important on the defensive side is what the Heat do really well is they change the architecture of the game. They change the timing of the game. They're like Denver basically is like as rhythmic of a team as you'll see in terms of team basketball. They play almost as if they're they play as if they're almost timing their offense to a metronome or something like that. Like just like it's very, very rhythmic.
And it's very rhythmic based on the way that Jokic can distribute the ball as
exactly.
well.
And the two-man game between Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic.
Yes.
So because Eric Spoelstra and the Heat are extremely he's a great coach and they're an extremely smart team, they're just like, what we need to do is disrupt that rhythm. What we need to do is kind of grind the game to a halt and make the rhythm weird.
And I know that Jamal Murray had 18 points, but it was not Jamal Murray's best game. By any stretch of the imagination.
They also were baffling him and Michael Porter Jr. on defense.
Well, Porter was as cold as it gets, and then that's kind of like
Porter was 3 for 16 behind the arc, and he literally got benched for Bruce Brown.
As someone that bet on his over for points, I was a little pissed off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
and he got benched for Bruce Brown because of his defense. He was not making rotations. They were making things not only just difficult, but they were confusing these guys. They were making it so that they didn't know exactly, should I go under the screen? Should I go over the screen? Where am I rotating to? Why is Gabe Vincent wide open while we're 5 guys in the paint ready for a kick out to Vincent for 3? Like the Heat do a masterful job of not letting teams remain comfortable even when they're up. The Nuggets went on a 40-15 run and won the minutes that Nikola Jokic was on the bench during the first or second quarter. Like, under any other circumstance, at home, this is a loss for another team. But, the Denver Nuggets had not lost a home game with Jokic playing since March 12th of this year.
I did not realize that. That's pretty incredible.
Like, this is what the Heat do best, is they just muck up the works, put a wrench in the gears, and dare you to try and keep up with that.
And Spoelstra just is on another level in terms of understanding what his team needs. I mean, Kevin Love, he hasn't played since Game 5 of the Celtics series.
And he came in and played some pretty decent minutes. He hit a few shots, good passes.
They got big off the bench. They decided to make it themselves a little bit more defensively sound, and it made a big difference.
And even Kyle Lowry hit a few key shots, which he has been kind of in and out in terms of absence and presence in the playoffs this entire time. And he came in and played it was like every guy.
But he defensively is absolutely.
Oh, of course.
I mean, I love Kyle Lowry.
Even for his age, and not being the biggest guy on the court, there's a reason why he was obviously the emblem of the Toronto Raptors, is because that hard-nosed scrappiness is because basically I think in my opinion sometimes I almost see the Raptors as Heat North, just because they're very very technically skilled, very sound, very athletic, very almost to a fault hew to their scheme and to their ethos. And Kyle Lowry is just beyond Jimmy Butler probably being the most Heat of the Heat. Kyle Lowry is a close second in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just in terms of mindset and execution. So I mean, it's really amazing to see these guys play. And it's really amazing to see them constantly overturn expectations. And this wasn't a blowout. This was a really hard game to win. You saw Jimmy Butler literally, I don't know if you caught this, after the buzzer sounded, there was a camera right in Jimmy's face, and you just hear him under his breath go, "Fuck."
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Because he just was I can't believe we came back and did that.
Well, so to the point about team basketball, the Nuggets weren't rebounding. That was because of the hustle by Miami. They also the Miami was able to get their shooters open in ways that we hadn't seen in Game 1. And just to return to your Bam Adebayo point, he's been the best player for the Heat for the past 4 or 5 games. I mean, I'm not taking any away from Jimmy Butler. I've heaped praise on him. He looked completely unstoppable for a majority of these playoffs.
But he was really stifled in Game 1.
Game 1,
he was not
13, 14 points, something like that.
And on very inefficient shooting. It was a lot of he was grinding to try and get his opportunities, but he was not faring very well. And he struggled in the first 3 quarters of this game and then came back because he as anyone is, indefatigable, as they might be. I would say that's, I think,
I don't know that.
A proper adjective for the Heat. Well, it just means they're tireless.
Yeah, okay.
But Jimmy is that embodied. He was I'm playing like crap, or I'm not playing particularly well, but he has that mindset, or he has that intention to not allow that to be I'm just going to take myself out of the game. There are good players who, when they are playing poorly, you can see it, whether they are intentionally doing it or not, that they're out of the rhythm of the game. They are I can't come back and assume another level of consistency when I don't have it to begin with. Like when the rhythm is off, some players can't get back into rhythm, and Jimmy is capable of playing. He could play like shit for 3 quarters and then come back and be the hero in the 4th quarter. Like all of these players, I think, a lot of the Heat have that mentality. A lot of the players in the Heat have that mentality. But one of Jimmy Butler's greatest skills is having a short-term memory. Is just not beating himself up for missing a shot or missing a free throw or being inefficient in the field. Like he is ready to go. He's ready for that switch to flip every time.
Otherwise, you could just say he has ice in his veins, which is,
one could say he has that dog in him.
One could say that. Wu-Tang Forever says Spo has been coaching out of his mind this postseason. They really shut down the Nugs, other than Jokic, who is always going to get his. Still got Denver in 6. That was what Spoelstra's point was.
Exactly,
to your point, Wu-Tang Forever. That is the exact case. And you have to understand who you're playing against if you're going to beat them. I'm reminded
100%.
of to bring it back to football, Bill Belichick's 1991 Super Bowl game plan is in the Hall of Fame for a reason. And what he did for the Giants as the defensive coordinator at that time was he took away one facet, and now I'm going to butcher it because I wasn't alive at the time, but I do remember it from reading about it. I think it was either the run or the pass. I believe it was the run for the Bills. He just said, we're not one of them. Don't quote me on this. But he took away just one element. We're going to focus on just stopping this, and we're going to let them get X amount of yards on the ground. I believe it was on the ground. And that's how we're going to win the game. And the players at the time were like, what are you talking about? How is that possible? We can't let them get X amount of yards because that means they're going to beat us. But no, we're just going to focus on stopping one thing because we know that they're too good at this. We have to play in a different dimension. And so it's kind of the same thing with Jokic. He's going to get his. He's getting a triple-double. Oh, last night he didn't get the triple-double. Oh, my God. He just got a double-double. But he's basically doing whatever he wants at will. You have to find other ways to beat them, and they were able to out-rebound them, get scoring from all these different players, and make their secondary and tertiary contributors a little cold on especially behind the arc.
And in our preview, that's what we were talking about, and I think with a little bit more recent Belichickian history, if you'll recall the was it the 2018 Super Bowl when there was the Rams Super Bowl, the Patriots Rams Super Bowl?
Yeah. The one that was 13-10.
That was that the if you I don't it's hard to remember because it was a long time ago and there's so much has occurred since that time in the NFL. But the Jared Goff led Rams were one of the most brutally efficient offenses in the entire league, which is like a testament to Sean McVay, but also a testament to
13-3 2019.
But it's a testament to Sean McVay, but it's also a testament to Bill Belichick holding that offense to 3 points because he was like, I know what makes them tick. If I take that away, can they counter that?
Yeah.
Does this offense who does basically the same exact thing in their running game to very, very efficient effect? Can Sean McVay, when that spigot is turned off, is there a plan B? And there wasn't. They scored 3 points. So, and he was also relying on plays from the 1940 Rose Bowl or something like that. There are genius minds in sports who are we develop counters to these very good teams and then counters to those counters. That's where you really see the chess match cliches or analogies come into the fore because this is much more difficult than just saying spam the good thing, spam the thing that people it's hard for people to counter.
Exactly.
There's always a counter.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing with some people clowned Andre Iguodala with being like, "Oh, you won Finals MVP. LeBron dropped 35 points per game." That's because of the exact same mindset or exact same strategy for Jokic. Let LeBron James try and win 1-on-5. If we can stifle every other outlet he has, he can get 35 points per game and lose in 5.
Exactly.
So it's the same strategy. We'll obviously see if it'll pay off, but there's precedent for this.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna actually transition to football, so it's a good transition. But you see this on offense and not just defensively too. In terms of what you adjust for. We just saw it in the most recent Super Bowl. Like a lack of it on the Eagles side. Jonathan Gannon being like a big wet fart and like not
like the best defense in the league getting kind of shredded by end runs by Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, like the same play inverted. You know?
But they had run that play, the Chiefs, multiple times early on in the year. Apparently also against the Arizona Cardinals, which is where they were playing, where Jonathan Gannon was busy interviewing instead of preparing for the game. But they did that like exact same play, and that dude was not ready for it. And that's what kind of separates some of the best coaches in professional sports and those who don't, is the anticipation to understand what breaks or another team is and when you can put your foot on the gas. But we'll talk about the NFL in just a second. Let's read some IMs that have come in. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator says, "Whoa, looks like the Heat really cooked those Nuggets. Am I right? Heyo." Yeah. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. It's like the 20th derivation of the heating up Nuggets joke that I've seen, but you put your own spin on it. Dave from Jamaica says having a short memory is top level sports is so good. I mean, that's I think what you can like. You can attribute that to a lot of the clutchest players in sports. Having a short memory, guys that are able. I'm trying to think of. I mean, off the top of my head right now, I would say that Joe Burrow is somebody that comes to mind.
Or even if you just the template, Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan, exactly.
Kobe Bryant, or like, Joe is a good. I mean, Mahomes. I mean, honestly, Mahomes.
Mahomes too. Yeah. Mahomes is more like just go out and play football. I feel like
the chain smokers came through.
Yeah, like he's just more of a frat guy that just knows one way and let's go. But I mean, I guess that's the same thing with Joe Burrow. Burrow's just more cerebral in the way that he presents.
I would also probably say too with Mahomes that like his I would say superpower beyond like a short-term memory potentially, because honestly he hasn't had many bad games. So is pain tolerance.
Yeah.
Like is like he can play on one leg.
He is the pain sponge.
Yeah. He's the pain sponge. Yeah. He's Tom. He's Tom Womskins.
Poor guy. Can't be. He cannot be Tom because he has elite traits. He's not just the pain sponge. The pain sponge is what was that?
Phillip Rivers
is Keith Yandel. All right, this is like a very obscure hockey reference, but Keith Yandel just recently got benched this year on the Philadelphia Flyers, but he had the streak for the Ironman streak. Let's see how many Keith Yandel.
Yager could have been a good pain sponge too.
He also was a good pain sponge.
Yager played a lot forever.
The amount of consecutive games that Keith Yandel 989 consecutive.
Oh, also
that's the
Phil Kessel.
Phil Kessel beat him out. Yeah. I didn't realize that. Okay, I thought Yandel had the record.
Kessel could really be the pain sponge.
Wow. Yeah.
Talk about.
He also looks like a sponge.
Talk about kind of frat guy who really knows one thing, and that's play hockey.
Yeah.
That's Phil Kessel.
His last game missed was October 31st, 2009, when he played for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
He played the last 70 games of that season, and to date, every game since. Kessel broke Yandel's record on October 25th, 2022.
Insane.
So that's what happened. And Yandel's just not very good anymore.
The Coyotes.
Yeah. Jesus, man.
Going from winning cups with the Penguins to.
That's how Aiden Hill got his start. I did a Wikipedia deep dive on him. Playing for the Coyotes. Thankfully, he got the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But
smart move by the Coyotes, right?
Always.
They'll just recruit a guy off campus, get him in goal. You want to play for a pro hockey team?
Yeah. Come on.
Where are you going? Chemistry class?
You look the part.
Yeah. You play hockey?
God, if they really keep them in that arena for another year, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have no personal investment in it.
It's like.
But they're raising the cap.
It's mania-inducing, I will say.
Let's just talk about this briefly. The damn, like Gary Bettman has said that they're not raising the cap more than $1 million this year.
Oh my gosh, that's sticker shock for me. 1 million.
The rest of the leagues in the country. I mean, there's obviously Major League Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, but the NFL, it's now known that like. Patrick Mahomes signed a $500 million contract after he won his first Super Bowl. he's now needing a raise because it's so outdated what he's making on an annual basis relative to what other quarterbacks are making as the salary cap continues to explode.
I mean, Jalen Hurts is now out earning Patrick Mahomes, and like factually, that's just like I love Hurts, but Mahomes he is not.
I mean, we just saw who just defeated him in the Super Bowl and outplayed him.
And it also goes to show, as you're saying though, that like in the next round, like we're gonna see some really eye-popping numbers for guys like Mahomes, Burrow, and Herbert. You know, because
Herbert's next up and Burrow's next up. Same draft.
Even Allen's extension, I think, looks like kind of quaint relative to the money that these guys are now getting.
Totally. I mean, and that is the like, I guess, I mean, it's comparing apples and cherries.
Yeah.
Talking about the NFL
of course,
versus the NHL. But because of inflation, because of like the influx of gambling, and that also has an effect on the NHL, it is unconscionable that they're only raising the salary cap by $1 million. And
it's absurd.
That is because of teams like the Arizona Coyotes that operate as essentially money laundering organizations for the rest of the NHL. They're not serious about ever winning anything.
Yeah, they're slush funds.
And if you want to be a serious league, and I'm not even sure that hockey wants to, I think there's a lot of cheap owners in hockey.
And like regionalism, you know,
and exactly.
a kind of innate desire to not globalize or expand the game.
Yeah, I mean, Clower writes, and are you really comparing the NFL and NHL? I'm really not. They're apples and cherries, as I said, in terms of size.
It's impossible.
The point is that money's going up everywhere, though. That money
Absolutely.
and the gambling element is pouring money into every sport right now, except, honestly, horse racing, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which was the only sport for a while that you could gamble on, and now no one wants to because it seems disgusting, and, you know, I get that. But, like, the fact that it's just $1 million makes absolutely no sense. And it's all this like, oh, we had to put money in escrow in the pandemic and we got to pay it back, yada, yada, yada. No, it's so the owners that own these NHL teams can capture as much money as they want without having to pay a lot. And that's a big problem that the NHL has, is that like there's not an adequate penalization for cheaping out, and just by its nature of being by far the distant fourth of the big four in North America, you attract the cheapest, like almost grimiest billionaires. I know that's an oxymoron, or rich people. You can get a few millionaires together to buy a hockey team, honestly.
Well,
and then they choose not to spend that money because they're the kind of rich guy that buys a hockey team, and that's what makes them cheaper, you know?
The other thing too about the two things you mentioned, like escrow, this idea of like, oh, this money has to be in escrow. This is another excuse the MLB makes, yet as I was saying in our most recent episode from Wednesday, Baseball Prospectus did a little bit of an analysis of the earnings report for the last quarter or year for the 30 MLB teams, or 30 however many MLB teams they are, and the amount of revenue that the teams that have the lowest payroll, that ratio meant that the biggest bang for the team's buck was not from the teams that were making more, like the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees or whoever, who have exorbitant payrolls and also because of their markets exorbitant revenue. The teams like the Reds and the Orioles were the ones that basically had the higher profit margins because they were spending less.
Yeah.
So the basically,
we talked about this in reference to the Oakland A's,
right? And so the escrow. So I was just saying the escrow part is BS first and foremost for the NHL, because I'm sure it's similar. Secondly, what was the other thing you said besides escrow? There was the other escrow and
the gambling
pandemic. I'm sorry.
The pandemic.
One thing I wanted to say, just to do a little tie-in back to the Majority Report, is if you are at all a fan of the Majority Report or watch the Majority Report, it's very clear that industry did not hamper.
Yes,
good
point.
The industry was not hampered by COVID-19. There were many, many, many sectors of the economy that saw an extreme boom in their profits from the pandemic. So both of those points, in one way or another, are complete bullshit.
Totally.
It's a choice to keep those. It's a choice to tamp down the spending. It's a choice to tamp down the talent pool.
Absolutely.
And we even talked about it. We can obviously, I don't want to keep us too much on our Coyote screed, but it's a choice when your best player, for essentially Philip Chikrin, you're like, you know what?
Jacob Chikrin,
excuse me. Don't need that guy.
Yeah.
Aiden Hill, a clear gem for a now Stanley Cup finalist. It's like, yeah, but he's probably bad. So.
I know they traded him to the Sharks too, another kind of embarrassment of an organization right now. And then,
it's just emblematic of a similar thing that we're seeing in the other husk of an organization, which is the MLB, is just teams that are just basically continuing to rake in profits just by virtue of being part of this cartel of teams without having to actually prove anything or show for it.
Yeah.
That's why I joke about it sometimes. I'm legitimately pro relegation for baseball and hockey.
Right.
Like there should be some actual penalty for sucking.
Totally. But the problem is just that Bettman and co are more interested in markets than they are in actually expanding the sport and
keeping the team in Arizona where clearly nobody fucking wants it.
Well, let's really hope that they don't, honestly. I mean, I'm still holding out hope for some reason on that front. Clower writes in, says, okay, you just said it's absurd. Bettman is an NBA refugee after 25 years. He still doesn't try to understand hockey. I mean, it's yes, exactly right.
That's probably why he went. He was like, they spend too much money in the NBA. That's so annoying.
I
find the product a little too entertaining for me.
Too many people care.
Yeah,
there's too much personality.
It's slightly
involved.
too exciting.
Yeah, the ratings, it's like a little too big for my taste.
Yeah, I'd rather just,
So I want to touch on this Dalvin Cook situation because this is really weird. He has now been a part of trade/cutting rumors for months at this point. And the Vikings hired a new general manager last offseason, Kwesi Odefo-Mensah. Sorry if I was a little
good.
off on that.
Yeah, I think you got it.
Yeah. And he's clearly a new age general manager. Analytics focused, right? And from the outside, that seems to be what's driving a lot of this, because I gotta be real. When I saw these rumors, I anticipated that Dalvin Cook's contract was something like backloaded and, the Vikings would be smart to get out of it, especially if they're trying to retool their team.
It's our default setting for a veteran running back, either being available or we're always kind of like, oh, their contract probably sucks, but
it doesn't, and that's what is just shocking to me.
It's the Zeke precedent almost. We're like, oh, he's probably
But at least honestly, the Cowboys did him right by cutting him during free agency,
at least giving him the opportunity to sign somewhere else. Yeah,
the Vikings, from a fiscal standpoint, are doing the smart thing in that they have waited until after June 1st to cut him. And that would create a situation where there's less dead money if they do have to cut him. But clearly, I think they're trying to get some trade interest right now. And we're living in a reality where the Cardinals couldn't get any compensation whatsoever for DeAndre Hopkins. So I have very little faith that they would get any compensation without retaining salary, which they clearly seem to not want to do for Dalvin Cook. But
I don't know if you saw, Emma, though, also that there was a report. I don't remember the source exactly, but it was push notification through Bleacher Report. But,
right.
Basically, that just a bunch of front offices basically said, Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook. There's just no interest for these guys.
Absolutely. I bet Zeke ends up back with the Cowboys on some veteran minimum, because who else? Who else is going to get one? The Dolphins seem to be actually interested in Dalvin Cook, and that would be incredible, right?
And
just given their
smart,
totally smart
move for their offense.
Perfect for their team, but from the Vikings perspective, I really don't like this. I got to be honest with you, and I understand general managers trying to make smart decisions for their team in the salary cap era. That's their job. But from the outside, I got to say, Dalvin Cook has been one of the only bright spots in that Vikings organization for a long period of time. And cutting him would only save them $2 or $3 million in cap space. So would you rather have the $2 million in cap space, or would you rather have Dalvin Cook? And what are you going to do with that cap space? Free agency's already passed. I mean, it seems like they are cooling on this, but like the NFC is wide open.
And also
wide open. That division is.
Absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers
100%.
has left the division.
Jordan Love led Packers.
We don't know what they're going to be.
The Bears.
The Bears are the Bears, and the Lions have a lot of hype, but they're still an unproven commodity to a certain degree.
There's
and
no guarantee they're going to win the division necessarily.
You know who won the division last year? You guys.
The Vikings.
And like, I just find so. Hopefully, the defense is improved now that you have a actually like intelligent defensive coordinator in Brian Flores. I mean, try to compete. Don't get so like hamstrung by an analytics focused approach
and like
that
positional value
value that you would get rid of a guy who's also apparently very popular in the locker room, so you can't quantify that.
He's like, he's
I mean, he's done everything right. He had another 1,000 yard rushing season last year. You can't quantify what cutting a guy who's done everything right for your organization for $2 million in cap space for that little amount of money with, by the way, I don't think he has any guarantees after this year. So you could just cut him next year for nothing. What does that say to your locker room? That sends a really defeatist message that I would not want to have to handle if I was Kevin O'Connell.
And also practically, just like from a pure like player standpoint, I also just think it's like, I think one of the notifications I got, or one of the reports I got, was basically like on Bleacher Report or whatever, was like, Vikings feel comfortable potentially losing Cook in favor of Alexander Madison. I'm sorry, Alexander Madison won respectfully. Like he's not a starting running back.
No,
he's not a 3-down back. He's a secondary option to supplement a better running back. If you're saying that, it's not serious. Like it's not serious to be like, you know what, we'll get enough production out of Alexander Madison so we can get rid of Dalvin Cook.
He's a good player.
It's not Zeke and Tony Pollard. It's not the same.
It's
completely different. Like you're not, like, you can't tell your fan base that that's going to be the number one guy without another option. It's just not feasible. Well, we've watched the Vikings play.
Which makes me wonder if ownership is getting involved here and being like, whoa, we got a lot of number 4 jerseys in the stands. We're not doing this for $2 million, which, I mean, I would agree. Or it could be ownership cheaping out. We don't really know. But I don't know. I'm just... Given the level of production that a player like Dalvin Cook provides to your team, we have to bring a little socialism to the NFL right now and correct the marketplace, because the free market ain't doing the right thing right now. There needs to be some sort of compensation fund for fantasy darlings. If the NFL wants to keep trafficking in fantasy football and leaning so hard into it that they have their own app for fantasy football, that they have their own show on NFL Network, that like they put little fantasy football tickers on the bottom of Red Zone, that they sell that as a selling point for packages where you can watch all of your teams at the same time for NFL Game Pass, right? That's what it's called?
League Pass.
League Pass.
Which
yeah.
is
I don't have it yet. I'm getting it this year.
Or Sunday Ticket, which I think is now literally.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sunday Ticket.
Which is like an Apple exclusive or something now, right? I
YouTube.
Think it's YouTube exclusive, right?
Yeah.
Hey, of course,
Thanks, YouTube.
we need another streaming tie-in.
But this might actually let me to might cut the cord now for real if I can get, because I had it for MSG to see Knicks and Rangers games and for Red Zone. Like that's really what I wanted. And now that I can get them a la carte, I might cut the cord. But regardless,
I think that's a little bit more sensible, because I actually just do think more. For example, I think more people would be amenable to a YouTube TV package with Sunday Ticket, as opposed to being like, oh, I need Apple TV Plus to watch like 5 baseball games.
Exactly.
Or like I need Amazon Prime Video for Thursday Night Football. Like Sunday Ticket for in a cable package is actually like a useful service.
Totally.
Like it's not
totally. But putting that aside for just 1 second,
but it's the same trend.
This is BS. They need to treat their running backs with more respect, given the value that they're providing for the league.
We said it. Running back strike.
running back strike, separate fund to pay them, because the idea that Dalvin Cook can provide that much value for that organization in jersey sales and, like even in the crappy days when they were just middling or like 7-9 with Kirk Cousins or whatever they ended up being, like Dalvin Cook was their bright spot. And I will also say this sends a message to someone like Justin Jefferson, who's about to need his next contract. How are they treating you? I know a receiver is a really different situation, but he's going to look to reset the market, I would imagine, get paid as the highest paid receiver in the history of the sport. I don't know how much that $2 million really does anything to help that situation, honestly, with the post-June 1 cap designation. But if they really are hoping for a trade, my guess is that's not happening, because a trade without salary retention for Dalvin Cook, I just can't imagine like someone like the Dolphins doing that. I'm sorry.
No way.
No way.
They'll hope for the June 1st cut and pick him up off the scrap heap.
Totally right.
That's just the way it goes.
Another football item here that I wanted to talk about before we touch on horse racing, and then maybe we'll open up the phone lines. But CJ Stroud, I could not be rooting harder for this kid. I mean, seriously. We have this clip of Matt Burke, his defensive coordinator, and Bradley's going to pull that up now. But CJ Stroud went through it in terms of smears and attacks, not on his ability, not on his character, not on anything that he's ever done on the football field or really off except a test. He got so much crap in the draft process that it became abundantly clear that this was either an effort by the agent of another quarterback, Will Levis, because they have rival agencies. Actually, I don't know what Anthony Richardson's agency is, but it doesn't seem like basically where the smoke was coming from. It does not seem like that. They seem to have a pretty good sense that he would go to the Colts. And go to the Colts he did. So I have doubts that it was Anthony Richardson's camp. Based on the desperation shown by Will Levis's team and leaking so much crap about him, I feel like it's from the same source. I don't know. It could be that. Or it could have been a team that had a trade in place with, say, the Cardinals at 3 that really, really, really wanted CJ Stroud to fall. Regardless, it's dirty, dirty business to do this about a 21-year-old, 22-year-old kid, essentially leaking to the press. Yeah, he's so dumb. His processing is terrible. He didn't pass this new analytics test that we've decided is completely determinative of success / failure, based on a very small sample size and the fact that certain teams like the Carolina Panthers literally have business deals that include this kind of test.
I was just going to say, and apropos of absolutely nothing, the Carolina Panthers have a contract with the company that produces the S1 test.
I mean, bizarre, total coincidence, I guess.
And the S1 folks, they're paragons of transparency. Drew McGarry, who is a defector writer and also a freelancer for SF-Gate magazine in San Francisco, SF-Gate wanted him to go to the headquarters in Nashville and take the S1 test, and the S1 folks were like, "Oh, sure, totally," and they were like, "You can totally come take the test. We can't give you the results."
Yeah.
They were just like, we can totally come and take the test, totally fine, but like we just can't disclose our process or anything about it or give you the results of the test.
Oh, well,
And so Drew was just like, okay, there's literally no point in me doing this exercise.
But I'll write about this for my story.
Right, that they are so disinclined to actually show the results of their process.
And thankfully the Texans didn't listen to this crap. They saw that, like, at least from my untrained eye, just as a fan, CJ Stroud as a overall passer and player at the quarterback position, I think was leagues ahead of every other prospect. Because I have major concerns about Bryce Young's size. For me, it's like he might have some success initially, but that chicken will always come home to roost. But putting that aside for a second, I just wanted to highlight what people who actually are playing with CJ Stroud are saying. This is the defensive coordinator here for for the Texans asked about CJ Stroud, Matt Burke.
Very, very early in the process, but from a defensive standpoint, what have you seen on the offensive side of the ball from CJ Stroud?
Is it Bobby coming in here next?
Well, I'm saying from CJ. Well, you're the defense coordinator.
Thank you. I'll tell you one story. Honestly, we did a 2-minute drive at the end of practice sometime last week, and he threw into a kind of a coverage we hadn't shown. It was the first day we put the coverage in, and he threw in. Kind of probably wasn't a throw he probably wanted back. I'll just say it that way. But the first thing he did when I was walking off the field, he grabbed me. He said, "Yeah, literally, Coach Burke." And he spent about 10 minutes walking in off the field, asking me about the coverage and just sort of what he saw and how we kind of set it up and talk through that. So I think just again his deliberateness and intent to try to get better, and like he's literally grabbing everybody he can in the field. I love like all those guys, Davis and Case and those guys. Like during stretch lines, I kind of go hang out and talk to them a little bit about some of the stuff we're doing in the periods and just try to get that back and forth. And so he's been very sort of intentional of learning and just learning defense too. Like, hey, what'd you call there? What was that coverage? Or what'd you do here? So I respect that from him.
So he's taking initiative to go to the defensive coordinator after plays and ask him about certain plays so he can process things a little bit better.
Brown noser.
Wow. I mean, he's asking questions. Why isn't he just a robot?
So entitled.
You want to know answers? You want answers so you can be a better football player?
Dork.
Wow. I mean, but did you pass the S1 with flying colors?
Yeah. Show me your hand motions.
I mean, wow, he
sensors
just
on.
Sounds like he just can't. He can't. It almost sounds like he can't read anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being facetious here, but look, I don't know what CJ Stroud's going to be like as a player, but I know that I'm rooting for him like crazy. There was a period in my life, like 5 years ago, when I would tell you with pride that my 3 favorite quarterbacks in the NFL were Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, maybe not 5, 4-ish years ago, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. 2 of those haven't aged that great. I still love Aaron Rodgers deep down, but the Deshaun Watson thing was a fall from grace. And honestly, I thought he was like the most stand-up guy. So like, you just never know what.
And of course, all of the personal stuff aside, it's a real shame just from if you put it in a vacuum. He had such an amazing rookie season, and the reason why it was so emblematic to like really affirm that he was actually good was that his team was absolutely like historically awful.
He dragged those teams to the playoffs. When the Texans made the playoffs under Billy O'Brien, that was Deshaun Watson putting on it, like in an Aaron Rodgers-esque way, where you're just putting the team on your back.
He had like one of the worst offensive lines, I think, in recent memory as a rookie.
Yeah,
and got them to at least win like 9 games. Like
he scored over 50 points in Seattle in that game.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget that game. Yeah, go on.
And no, it's unfortunate to think about now. Obviously, with everything that has gone on with him legally, as well as also, I mean, it certainly could be different now in Cleveland after this season.
Maybe it wasn't 50 points. I shouldn't say that.
But at the same time,
ton of yards though.
I think beyond obviously, calling his character, of course, into question, given all of these lawsuits and everything and everything on that frontier. He also just looks rather diminished.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's like he had a redshirt year or something. But my point,
essentially.
But the reason I even brought that up was just that I would love to see the Texans get it right again at quarterback.
Yeah.
And
with a guy who I think, of course, we always, like you said, it's always an open question of how they'll be on and off the field. No question. We haven't even seen him play one NFL snap, but I think this guy. I thought this guy was the most sure thing out of all 4 quarterbacks. He seems like a genuinely good guy. Mm-hmm. He seems like an upstanding guy, a leader, and who was not fazed by the scrutiny he was receiving. I loved his answer that he gave when they were like, when reporters were asking him about the S1 thing, and he was like, "Listen, man, I don't get paid to read. I get paid to play football." And I was like, "You're right.
You're right.
You're literally right."
And it turns out where it counts, he has incredible curiosity and thoughtfulness.
Seriously, yeah. It's not. I can't imagine every single quarterback prospect or drafted quarterback is trying to kind of enmesh himself within also the defensive scheme of what their team is running, so they could like become smarter, more evolved players, knowing the ins and outs of how a defensive coordinator is thinking. I'm sure there are some, but I don't think it's every single one of them.
No.
I guarantee you there are some incurious quarterback prospects. I think even seeing that a coach is acknowledging that curiosity this early on is a great sign. Coaches don't say this shit if they don't want to.
No, right.
They give boilerplate bullshit answers when they don't want to say something critical, but also don't want to say something nice either.
And apparently CJ Stroud's already, like, within 2 weeks, rocketed past Davis Mills in the depth chart. So,
yeah, exactly.
Sometimes coaches will keep their real starter, who's a rookie, down at the bottom to make him work his way up. But looks like it was undeniable. And based on Davis Mills' arm strength alone, Davis Mills does not have a strong arm. And I could imagine in practice people being like, whoa, this looks totally different. The release is incredible coming out of his arm, coming out of his hand.
And these Texans have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Put him out there. Give him live game reps. You got one of the best, maybe the best left tackle in the league. You have a pretty good offense. You have an pretty good offensive line. You got Dameon Pierce, who great
could be the best fantasy player next year. One of the top 5 fantasy players.
I would hope so. I had him this past year, which I kind of with that same forecast in mind.
I know, but now he'll be a first round pick, probably.
Exactly, as opposed to like a flyer.
Yeah.
But I just think there's nothing to lose with putting this guy out there, and the Texans are not. There's no stakes for the Texans this year. So I'm just excited to see what happens. I'm excited to see where he goes, and like you said, it's a nice thing to see so far that he's already making a good impression,
getting some support. Yep. All right, guys. One more story here. Talked about it in the title briefly, but some news from, I guess, over the weekend at this point. Might have been Friday. But Churchill Downs, the most famous racetrack in the country where the Kentucky Derby is held, has decided that it's going to suspend horse racing indefinitely at their facility because there have been deaths of not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, not 10, not 11, but 12 horses at Churchill in less than 2 months. I'm just going to reiterate that. This is a sport that makes millions and millions of dollars, less so recently, but should have some sort of, protections for the athletes, and in this instance, that is the horse. These are the horses as well as the jockeys too, but the horses, they have a dozen horses have died in 5 weeks at Churchill Downs. So thankfully, they're suspending it for at least a month. Wow, I mean, how magnanimous! But the problem here is that this sport is just so brutal, and I hesitate to say some of this because I know that things like football or boxing, hockey, incredibly brutal too. But at least in those instances, the damn players are getting compensated. And they have free will to understand what they're signing up for.
They're making a conscious choice to do this. And even players themselves will say that. They'll say, they want they understand the risks and they want to play football or they want to participate in combat sports or box. Again, this is not to excuse or absolve the brutality and the violence that is inherent within those sports. But like you said, they are making the choice to do so.
And
a horse can't make a choice to race.
Thankfully being compensated, right. And what's happening, or what is likely and alleged to be happening, I should say, is that these horses are getting jacked up with drugs, with painkillers, with anti-inflammatory drugs, where they push their muscles to the absolute limit and hurt themselves until they either die or have to be put down. And the pressure on the sport right now is that it's losing billions and billions of dollars due to gambling going to other sports. I mean, I've never bet on horse racing. I don't think I ever would because of how I feel about it. I do bet on football games and basketball games and hockey games and things like that.
And do you know what's propping up a lot of the industry? Heavy state subsidies.
Oh, I'm sure.
In New York, from a long time ago, there was this enormous fund
For Belmont?
to subsidize horse racing, specifically with the Belmont Stakes in mind, and the Aqueduct racetrack in Queens.
Ugh, yeah.
And it is literally it's like somebody says the term loss leader, like they keep it around when it makes essentially no money on its own to turn a profit, but is buttressed extraordinarily by taxpayer money.
And
so so beyond the brutality towards the horses, it's a fucking grift too.
Good points. New York Times wrote this in 2002. More than $15 billion bet on races. Then last year it was $12 billion. So they're already losing money to the tune of billions of dollars, and frankly, that's just going to keep going. But as money has been lost from gambling, the numbers of fatal injuries continue to increase. So the Times wrote this up in 2009. Thoroughbreds had fatal injuries at the rate of 2 per 1,000 starts. Last year, it's 1.25 fatalities per 2,000 starts compared to 1.39 fatalities. Okay, so it's around the same time, but it was the 4th consecutive year that the rate had decreased, I guess. So I'm reading that part a little bit on the fly, so I wasn't aware of that. But regardless, I don't really care.
But this spate was notable for the volume of horses at how close it was to race time.
Yes,
that 7 horses were under a few different circumstances died leading up to the race, or had to be or withdrew and then had to be put down. Like it's the volume aspect, or like the year to year, doesn't really absolve or like refute the idea that there's a real animal cruelty aspect to this industry and this sport that has really no reverence for an animal when its use it has passed.
Yeah, it's Dan from Columbus says, just to confirm, did you say 12 horses in 5 weeks, so slightly over 2 per week? Yes, I did say that. Also, this conversation has me randomly wondering if greyhound racing is still a thing.
It is.
I mean, dog fighting is still a thing behind the scenes, but
all of these practices that are pretty abusive towards animals, cockfighting, bullfighting. I mean specifically. Bull riding, of course, and like rodeo stuff is not very kind to bulls and different other rodeo animals, but specifically bullfighting, where the matadors, the specific goal is to not only, so-called defeat the bull, or it's to kill them. They have a what almost resembles like a pitchfork or something to stab the bull in the back as a way to end the fight. So there is like a lot of this stuff still exists, where there are these time-honored traditions and time-honored industries that, despite potentially falling out of favor culturally, manifest and persist to this day, regardless of how hollowed out they may be.
It's just that there is no consent that is able to be given by a horse to race like this.
Absolutely not.
There's no like nutritional purpose to killing this animal. This is not for food. This is for sport. And I don't know how this practice can continue. We're here in New York City, and it's unconscionable the way we treat the horses in Central Park.
Of course.
Let alone the way these thoroughbreds are abused time and time again and killed after they can't compete, or if their muscles break down given the drugs that are allegedly being pumped into them. And this is also different than, like, I'm not trying to eliminate horse racing or horse competition altogether. Very different from like dressage or jumping, which is just equestrian sports,
where they really value the horses.
They love the horses in those instances, as opposed to racing, which is like one of the grimiest sports cultures in the world. Let's just put that out there too. And like back when gambling was illegal for the most part, it attracted the kinds of unsavory characters that still populate a lot of the sport.
And also, just to say, if that's not enough, and if this is not enough in terms of convincing, when it comes to kind of the immorality inherent within the industry, if you want a human element other than that, besides the state subsidies and all the corruption inherent within that, the underclass in that sport too are probably the people who are arguably as maybe the closest with the horses themselves, and those are the jockeys.
Yeah.
Like the jockeys are the ones actually doing the racing. They're the ones that could potentially get injured if there is an accident on the track. And they're extremely underpaid, and the people who get the lion's share of the credit when the horses win, just as it is in every other professional sport, which I find to be the most fucking repugnant aspect of championship celebrations, is the first person who gets the trophy and gets to talk is the fucking owner.
Yeah. Of course, the owner of the horse. Oh, congratulations!
Like, tell me about all that. Tell me about how challenging it was to invest money into something to buy a horse.
Yeah, it must have been really tough when you scratched off that lottery ticket that only you could buy because you were wealthy enough, and it was probably nothing more than you buying like the equivalent of what would be a pizza pie for us. Exactly. But you deserve all the credit card in the world.
Yeah, congrats.
I mean, credit card. Jeez, this is what happens at 5 p.m.
I'd love to see some of these owners get on that horse and ride and see how well they'd fare after in the post game interview.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, it's been a long day, so I think I'm just gonna read some IMs. I'm sorry to say. Oh, I'm grumbling. We'll do calls next week.
Yeah,
I promise you.
We're on a short week. We basically had a Thursday night football schedule.
We did.
Wednesday last week because of the break, and then back right into Monday.
I read some of these.
It's exploitative.
Yes, it totally. Stop exploiting us for content. Dan from Columbus says, seems odd to me that they would do so little to take care of these horses. I'd assume they'd be taken good care of since they're expensive instruments in the eyes of the owners. But I guess other sports abuse their players. And they're actual people, like when a guy's concussed, but they try to get him back on the field. It's a good point, but it's actually more akin to Toradol in the NFL.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Except if
the
player wasn't consenting to Toradol, which is for people that don't know, it's a pain-killing drug that has contributed to intestinal problems for players, gut and liver problems, if I'm not mistaken, and just like other and it's not just the NFL, other sports use it too. It's a pain-killing injection that allows you to perform, and then later you'll feel horrible for the rest of the week or however long it takes.
It's literally, as you're saying, like it's like the equivalent of like when we see a guy get like laid out or like his ankle crushed or something like that, or even just a concussion, and they come out and are like somehow like upright and playing again. It's like, yeah, they got shot with an weapons grade painkiller so they could like make it through 30 more minutes of game action, then collapse afterwards.
Yeah, and they're essentially trying to get these horses like amped up to run as fast as they can.
Absolutely.
So the welfare of the horse after they're done is not a matter to these owners who are making these calls. They want them to win that race now.
And of course, I think people know, people watching, of course, if anyone's ever watched the Kentucky Derby or gone to a Kentucky Derby themed event, these races are incredibly short.
I went to the Preakness in college.
They're short. Like,
yeah.
They need.
I went to drink. I don't think I saw one horse, but
yeah, that's that. I feel like somebody's that's the way. It's just like go to the event and a vehicle for drinking.
My ex went to college in Baltimore, and so I went with their crew. And yeah, I don't think I saw one horse.
The races themselves are like when they actually. I mean, there's a lot of fanfare and pomp and circumstance with them, but they're like 30 seconds. These owners need these horses to be like active and jacked up for 30 seconds. Then it's over.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
What do you got for me now?
Right.
I'm not just gonna take care of you. You're not my pet.
Kowalski says you have to admit though, them horses in horse races have some very creative names. Oh, I hear that. J-Man Raps, what a great weekend for my Jays over the hapless Mets. I know that was a pathetic
sweep, unbelievable
performance. Is the guy Vogelback Bartolo Colon's illegitimate son?
If only. Big Sexy Jr.
I miss Big Sexy. Anyway, Arizona should go to Portland, and my boy Lowry doing his thing, playing winning basketball, loving this NBA Finals, left his best. Yeah, I mean, it's much more interesting now that the Heat stole that game. I'm still rooting for the Nuggets. I love Jimmy Butler, and I love, like, honestly, all of those guys on that team, but And I love Spoelstra, but it's like my Knicks fandom in me, I can't root for the Heat to win.
Well, my one counter to that is I actually feel a lot better about losing to the Heat.
True.
Because they're in the finals and beat the Celtics. So I'm like, honestly, we probably played them second closest relative to the Celtics and the Bucks.
Yeah.
Maybe even though Game 7, obviously the Celtics. I mean, we understand obviously coming back from 3-0 to make it 3-3 is extremely, singularly exhausting. I imagine. So I feel okay. I'm like, all right, they made it to the finals. It's not like they just got swept and like we look like assholes not being able to beat the lower seed. But I still agree. I still would love to see Joker win a championship.
It's a great kind of amazing. Either way, it's Denver's first championship in franchise
history. Or
history.
just like Jimmy Butler winning a championship.
Or it's like the most incredible Cinderella story that we've arguably ever seen in the NBA.
Like Team of Destiny stuff. Like,
exactly. Ika Ghost says, I've been to Saratoga. The wealth disparity is stark. Yep. Antifa Lockhart, you can't talk about horse tracks and not the Chicago Bears of Arlington Heights going broke because they were assessed what they paid for Arlington Racetrack. Antifa Lockhart, you're never going to let it go, are you?
It's June.
It's June.
We have 3 months till the NFL starts. Can you give me a break?
Tamora from the 5. ESVN has some of the best music in podcasting. Thank
Ava
you,
Raisa,
Ava.
our good pal.
Thank you,
Ava.
Ava.
Is the musician behind the break music and our theme song.
Ava.
She's an amazing, and also the break music for the Majority Report.
Yes. So if you like that and you like
check
this,
her out
check out Ava Raiza. Sorry.
Raiza. Yeah, her
Ava Raiza.
Yeah, that's right. Her Bandcamp is in both the Majority Report and ESPN descriptions for every show. So if you want to check that out.
Fruity Giuliani, I would say the owners of the horses should be forced to enter the same horse into the races no matter what the horse is conditioned for 2 years. But that would practically just turn into beating a dead horse. I don't even I can't even imagine the amount of drugs they would pump into that horse. And the final I am of the day. I don't get this one, but Ika Go says, Bradley, please install Nightbot.
Good point. Yeah, I'm on it.
What's Nightbot?
It's like a chat bot for YouTube chat. So like you can put commands in. So if they like put a command, it's like ESVN's on at 4 p.m. every day. And so they don't
cool.
have to, yeah. So
all right, we'll do that.
Do it, yeah.
All right, guys.
I did it for Majority Report, and they said what they said. They said the doubters said, the haters said that it could never be done.
The haters and losers.
The haters and the doubters and the losers said it could never be done. That Majority Report chat would never have Nightbot, and they did. So it'll happen for ESPN too.
All right.
Bank on it.
We shall. Thank you guys. Great stuff today. We're honestly, our predictions still going strong. Like, what did I say? I said Nuggets in 6. You said Nuggets in 5.
Yeah.
And I said Knights in 6, and you said Knights in 7. So that's where we are on track for right now. Keep up watching. Watch along with us. Tweet at us at ESVN Show. Like this stream. They'll get into the algorithm. If you're watching this back, comment below. Leave us a nice comment. Give us your thoughts. All that good stuff. Appreciate you all. We will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.